If you are an American and you are thinking about dating a Chinese woman, hold on for a second. Because what might begin as a fascinating, exotic adventure could quickly turn into one of the most complicated cultural storms of your life. Welcome to Cultural Clashes, the channel where we explore the raw truth of what really happens when love crosses borders. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video. Because after you hear this story, you'll want to tell us. Could you survive dating a Chinese woman? At first glance, Chinese women are magnetic. They are admired for their grace, elegance, discipline, and loyalty. They often combine traditional values with modern ambition, and this balance captivates many American men. For an American, meeting a Chinese woman feels like stepping into a world of mystery, beauty, and refinement. But beneath the charm lies a culture shaped by thousands of years of tradition, Confucian values, family honor, and social pressure that often clash violently with American ideals of freedom, independence, and individuality. Let's imagine a couple. Michael, a 34-year-old American from Boston, meets Li Na, a 27-year-old Chinese woman from Shanghai. From the first moment, he is captivated. Li Na is elegant, intelligent, and graceful. Michael admires the way she carries herself, her confidence, and her ambition. Li Na, in turn, is fascinated by Michael's humor, openness, and relaxed American style. Their connection is undeniable. At first, every conversation feels exciting, every date feels magical. But soon, the differences start to emerge. The first cultural clash comes from family involvement. In America, dating is often private, a matter between two people. In China, family plays a central role in relationships. Li Na's parents expect to be consulted on serious decisions, and their approval matters deeply. Michael is surprised when she mentions that her mother and father want to meet him soon, even though they've only been dating for a few months. He sees this as too fast. For her, it is natural. For her, love is not just between two individuals, it is between two families. What he calls intrusion, she calls respect. Marriage expectations appear quickly. In China, particularly for women in their late 20s, marriage is expected sooner rather than later. Family and society pressure women to marry before they are considered leftover women, Shang'an. Li Na feels this pressure. She asks Michael about his intentions after just a few months. Michael is shocked. In his culture, marriage talk might come years into a relationship. For her, waiting too long feels like irresponsibility. For him, rushing feels like a trap. Money and financial stability are another source of conflict. In Chinese culture, a man's ability to provide is seen as proof of seriousness. Owning property, having savings, and being financially stable are important for marriage. Li Na expects Michael to demonstrate his stability. She hints that, in China, men often buy an apartment before marriage. Michael laughs it off, thinking it's a joke. But for her, it is no laughing matter. For her family, financial security proves love. For him, love is about feelings, not money. Gender roles also bring tension. Li Na, though educated and independent, still expects Michael to lead, protect, and provide. When he suggests splitting bills equally, she feels disappointed. For her, equality in love is not about splitting bills but about a man showing his devotion by taking responsibility. Michael, who values fairness, is confused. What he calls respect, she calls weakness. Filial piety is another cultural divide. In Chinese tradition, children are expected to care for their parents as they age. Li Na makes it clear that, in the future, she will support her parents financially and emotionally. She expects her husband to share that duty. Michael is stunned. In his culture, independence from parents is the norm. For Li Na, refusing to support parents is unthinkable. For him, being asked feels overwhelming. What she calls duty, he calls obligation. Jealousy and loyalty show different dynamics. Li Na expects boundaries in Michael's social life. She disapproves of his close female friends and his casual approach to socializing. For her, loyalty means limiting interactions that could cause suspicion. Michael, however, sees nothing wrong with having female friends. He argues that trust should be enough. Li Na feels insecure. For her, devotion requires vigilance. For him, devotion requires freedom. Their definitions of love contradict each other. Social life also highlights differences. Li Na loves dining out with friends, celebrating festivals, and joining group activities. She expects Michael to participate enthusiastically in Chinese holidays, like Lunar New Year or Madadam Festival. At first he enjoys it, but soon he feels drained. He wants quiet nights at home, while she insists on participating in community life. For her, refusing feels like rejection. For him, insisting feels like pressure. Communication styles clash as well. Li Na is subtle, indirect, and cautious with words. She expects Michael to understand hints, to read between the lines. Michael, however, is direct, straightforward, and blunt. When she says, "I'm fine," she expects him to probe further. He takes her words literally and moves on. She feels neglected. He feels manipulated. What she calls subtlety, he calls dishonesty. What he calls honesty, she calls insensitivity. Even daily habits create tension. Michael wastes food casually, leaves lights on, and spends freely. Lina is horrified. In Chinese culture, where frugality is valued, wasting food is seen as deeply disrespectful. She criticizes him. He laughs it off. She feels disrespected. He feels attacked. As time passes, the pressure increases. Lina's family begins asking about marriage, financial stability, and his seriousness. Michael feels suffocated. He loves her, but he feels like he is being asked to give up his independence, his freedom, and his way of life. Lina feels insecure. She believes he is wasting her time. What once felt like love now feels like conflict. This is why so many Americans struggle when dating Chinese women. At first, the beauty, the grace, and the loyalty are magnetic. But soon, they discover that Chinese love is not light or casual. It is tied to family, tradition, and responsibility. Americans see love as freedom and individuality. Chinese see love as duty and family honor. Both are valid, but together, they clash. And this is only the beginning. Because as the relationship deepens, the expectations of family, money, and marriage grow even heavier. What once felt like romance begins to feel like obligation. Stay tuned, because in the next part, we will explore how these cultural clashes explode when Americans and Chinese women try to build a long-term future together, and why so many of these romances collapse under the weight of expectation. As Michael and Lina's relationship continues, the weight of their cultural differences grows heavier. What once felt like charm now feels like constant friction. Michael still admires Lina's elegance, her discipline, and her loyalty, but he feels trapped in a system of expectations that doesn't belong to him. Lina still values Michael's openness and humor, but she feels increasingly disappointed by his casualness and his refusal to adapt to her traditions. The first major crack comes when marriage becomes unavoidable. Lina's parents, growing concerned about her age, start asking serious questions. When will he propose? Where will they live? Does he own a property? For them, these are not just details, they are proof of seriousness. Michael is stunned. In his culture, buying a house before marriage is not an expectation, it's a luxury. For Lina's family, it's mandatory. When he tries to laugh it off, they see him as unserious. Lina feels ashamed. For her, his refusal to adapt means he isn't committed. For him, the pressure feels like a trap. Family obligations grow unbearable. Lina expects Michael to send gifts during Chinese New Year, to respect her parents with formal gestures, and eventually to support them financially as they age. Michael, who grew up in a culture where independence from parents is the norm, feels shocked. He resists, saying that parents should support themselves. Lina is horrified. For her, filial piety is sacred. For him, it is obligation. His refusal feels like disrespect. Her demands feel like exploitation. Jealousy and loyalty become toxic. Lina becomes increasingly suspicious of Michael's casual friendships with women, demanding explanations for his social life. Michael argues that trust should be enough, but she insists that devotion requires sacrifice. She wants him to cut off female friends, to prove his loyalty through boundaries. Michael feels suffocated. The more she demands, the more he resists. The more he resists, the more she accuses. Love turns into a cycle of fights. Money becomes a battlefield. Lina pushes Michael to think about financial planning, savings, and stability. She expects him to show responsibility by building a future. Michael prefers to live in the moment, spending freely. For her, this is immaturity. For him, her obsession with money feels cold. What she calls responsibility, he calls materialism. What he calls love, she calls recklessness. Social life and traditions add more strain. Lina expects Michael to attend Maidatum festival dinners, spring festival celebrations, and community gatherings. At first, he enjoys the novelty, but soon he feels drained. He wants privacy, quiet nights, and independence. She sees his refusal as disrespect. He sees her insistence as control. What she calls culture, he calls pressure. Even communication styles turn into conflict. Lina hints at her needs, expecting him to read between the lines. Michael, who takes words literally, misunderstands. She says, "I'm fine," expecting him to push further. He accepts her words and moves on. She feels neglected. He feels manipulated. Arguments grow from simple misunderstandings, leaving both frustrated. Daily habits widen the gap. Michael leaves messes, wastes food, and spends casually. Lina, raised to value frugality, is horrified. She criticizes him, telling him he is careless. He feels attacked. What she calls respect, he calls suffocation. What he calls freedom, she calls irresponsibility. That as months turn into years, the conflicts escalate. Michael feels like he is being asked to give up his independence, his individuality, and his way of life. Lina feels like she is being asked to betray her family, her culture, and her duty. Both feel trapped. This is why so many Americans fail when dating Chinese women. At first, the beauty, the loyalty, and the discipline are captivating. But soon, they realize that Chinese love is not casual. It is tied to family, tradition, and obligation. Americans see love as freedom, Chinese see love as duty. Both perspectives are valid, but together, they clash. Does this mean it's impossible? Not always. Some couples succeed. Some Americans adapt, embracing family obligations, traditions, and financial expectations. Some Chinese women adjust, accepting independence, individuality, and freedom. But these cases are rare. Most relationships collapse not because of lack of love, but because love alone cannot overcome thousands of years of cultural weight. So, should Americans date Chinese women? Only if they are ready to trade independence for obligation, individuality for family duty, and freedom for tradition. Only if they are ready to embrace not just a partner, but an entire culture of expectations. Because dating a Chinese woman is not just romance, it's stepping into a world where love is family, honor, duty, and tradition above all else. Unless you are prepared to carry that weight, maybe you should think twice before stepping into it. So, what do you think? Would you survive dating a Chinese woman, or would the family expectations, the financial pressure, and the cultural traditions crush you before love could last? Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to Cultural Clashes, and spread this story. Because when cultures collide, love is never simple, it is always a battlefield between worlds.